It's 11 questions on whiskey-related trivia, so let's throw back a glass and see how you do. This is Trivia with Buds. What it be? And welcome to another episode of the Trivia with Buds podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Buds. Thanks for checking out this show. Hopefully you found it over on iTunes by searching trivia, or somebody said, hey, you should check this out. You would love it. Or somebody sent you a link or something good like that. Let me know how you found the show. I always like hearing from new listeners how they stumbled across it. Today's episode is all about a little something called whiskey. We got some whiskey business going on for you today. And today's episode is recorded live at RT Rogers Brewing in Sierra Madre, California. You can play trivia with us there every Thursday night at 8 p.m. Before we get into today's episode, I thought it'd be fun to read from a little blog I found from 2015 on a website called scoopwhoop.com. I don't know what that means. It's 17 astounding facts you probably did not know about whiskey. So here is the first fact. It says, whiskey starts its life as beer, a deliciously true story. Whiskey is made from wort, W-O-R-T, which is the beer that gets distilled. In fact, wort is made out of all the ingredients that you would find in a glass of chilled beer: water, yeast, and malts. Moreover, the process is used to prevent unwanted pests. So there's a little piece of trivia for you. Here's another thing. It says, we spell Scottish and Canadian whiskey without the E, and the others as whiskey with the E. To E or not to E, that is the difference. When it comes to spelling, only refer to Scottish or Scotch whiskey or Canadian whiskey without the E. If its origins are rooted elsewhere, opt for whiskey with an E. That is something somebody pointed out to me just the other day. My friend Eric Custis, the manager over at Brewport Tap House in El Segundo, California, he said, hey, your whiskey's spelled wrong there because it was about Scottish whiskey and there should not have been an E. And I had never heard that before. So little tidbit for me. Now I know it. Number 3, it says the oldest whiskey is over 150 years old. The 400 milliliter bottle of Glenavon Special Liqueur Whiskey holds the Guinness World Record for being the world's oldest whiskey. It is rumored to be packaged in between 1851 and 58 and was owned by an Irish family till it was auctioned off to the Bonhams in London and fetched a staggering 14,850 pounds. That is quite a lot of money, I think, if I know what pounds are in the U.S. And I would think it was older than that. 150 years old, I feel like somebody's grandpa, or great-grandpa, rather, or great-great-grandpa, probably had a bottle that's never been opened, right? 150 doesn't seem that old to me for whiskey, but maybe I just don't know. It says, number 4, Macallan M whiskey is the most expensive in the world. A lilac decanter of Macallan M whiskey was auctioned off for 393,109 pounds this year in Hong Kong and came to be known as the world's most expensive make of this alcohol. The luxury decanter contains 6 liters of whiskey drawn from Spanish oak sherry casks dating from the 1940s to the 1990s. And they have a picture of it in a fancy, fancy glass case. Here's your last one I'll read. Number 5, the word whiskey means water of life. That's perfect, right? If you like drinking it. Whiskey comes from the Gaelic word, which reads Úsaid Bíd, which translates as water of life. It later came to be pronounced as Uski, which is then turned into whiskey. Need we say more? So there's some 5 random whiskey facts for you before we begin this episode. So hopefully that titillated your whiskey sense of life. We're going to jump into these 11 questions that were recorded in Sierra Madre, California right now. So let's see how you do. Get your little note card, get your little score sheet, and start writing down the answers. Or yell them out if you're playing along in the car. Here we go. All right, here's your next round of trivia at RT Rogers Brewing in Sierra Madre, California. Here's whiskey. This whole round's about whiskey. Whiskey-related things. Let's see who's the drunkest of them all. Number 1, who released a song called Tennessee Whiskey in 2015? Number 1, whiskey trivia. Number 1, who released a song called Tennessee Whiskey back in 2015? Question number 2, whiskey. In what 2014 action movie does a glass of Delmore Sinclair, 62-year-old, get precariously passed from character to character? Number 2, in what 2014 action movie does a glass of Delmore Sinclair, 62-year-old, get precariously passed from character to character? Number 2. Here's number 3. What actress published a 2018 book called Whiskey in a Teacup? What growing up in the South taught me about life, love, and baking biscuits? Number 3. What actress published a 2018 book just this past year called Whiskey in a Teacup. What growing up in the South taught me about life, love, and baking biscuits. Here's a hint. I bought it for my wife for Christmas. Does it help anybody? Number 3. Question 4. Whiskey. On what famous LA boulevard would you find the club Whiskey A Go-Go? Number 4. On what famous LA boulevard would you find the club Whiskey A Go-Go? Some of you look like you've been partying there since 81. Number 5, what leading lady starred in the comedy Whiskey Tango Foxtrot in 2016? Number 5, what leading lady starred in the comedy Whiskey Tango Foxtrot in 2016? Number 6, what famous author said too much of anything is bad, but too much whiskey is barely enough? Number 6, what famous author said too much of anything is bad, but too much whiskey is barely enough? I like this quote. Number 6. I feel the same way about trivia. Number 6. Wah, wah. Number 7. What red garnish is traditional in a whiskey sour? Number 7. What red garnish is traditional in a whiskey sour? Number 7. Question number 8. What actor notoriously chugs a bottle of Jack Daniels in Animal House? Number 8. What actor notoriously chugs a bottle of Jack Daniels in Animal House? Fun side fact, it was Ice-T in the movie. Number 8.
Well, I did the same thing in a college sketch, but I did this thing where I made it out of tea.
Oh, yeah?
But everyone thought it was real.
There you go. Number 9, an average of 34 bottles of whiskey are exported from what country every second? Number 9, an average of 34 bottles of whiskey are exported from what country every second? Number 9.
How you spelled whiskey? That would yeah.
Number 10. During what war were many bourbon distilleries converted in order to make fuel and penicillin instead? Number 10. During what war were many bourbon distilleries converted in order to make fuel and penicillin? Number 10. And your bonus question for 2 points. What U.S. state is home to more barrels of maturing bourbon than people living in the state? For 2 points, what U.S. state is home to more barrels of maturing bourbon than people living in the state? Write it down. Take a guess. That's the end of round number 3, whiskey. We'll be right back with the answers in just a bit. Here we go, guys. Answers to the whiskey round. Let's see how you did on these whiskey-related questions. Number 1, who released a song called Tennessee Whiskey in 2015? That was Chris Stapleton. One of my favorites. Love that song. Great album called Traveler. You should check it out. Number 2, in what 2014 action movie does a glass of Dale Morris Sinclair, 62-year-old, get precariously passed from character to character? Kingsman: The Secret Service. Kingsman: The Secret Service. Number 3. Nice job, everybody. What actress published a 2018 book called Whiskey in a Teacup? Reese Witherspoon. Number 4, on what famous LA boulevard would you find the club Whiskey A Go-Go? Sunset Boulevard. Sunset. Number 5, what leading lady starred in Whiskey Tango Foxtrot in 2016? Tina Fey. Guys, that stands for WTF. Get it? Get it? Number 6, what famous author said too much of anything is bad, but too much whiskey is barely enough? Mark Twain. Mark Twain. You guys put J.K. Rowling. Number 7, what red garnish is traditionally in a whiskey sour? Cherry. Cherry. Number 8, what actor notoriously chugs a bottle of Jack Daniels in Animal House? John Belushi. Number 9, an average of 34 bottles of whiskey are exported from what country every second? Scotland. Number 10, during what war were many bourbon distilleries converted in order to make fuel and penicillin? World War II. And the bonus for 2 points, what U.S. state is home to more barrels of maturing bourbon than people living in the state? Kentucky was the answer. Kentucky. Those are your answers to whiskey. Nice job, everybody. Well done.
There it was, whiskey-related trivia. Now, somebody complained that round at my live nights did not have that much to do with whiskey. But if you've ever played any of my trivia nights or listened to this podcast, you know that it's very loosely usually based on just like that word or theme. So there were some pop culture whiskey questions in there. There were some actual whiskey questions in there. And I like to mix it back and forth between those two styles of things. Thanks so much for listening to this episode. If you have any critiques, you can always leave them in an iTunes review. That would be great to help us get up on those charts. I have not put a lot of effort into asking people to leave reviews in a while. So if you want to do that, that would be very, very cool of you. You can also join our Patreon page for just $1. You throw $1 on there, you get into this Discord app chat, and we post some different things in there every other day or so, and some pictures from my new website that no one has seen before, things like that I just threw in there, and some extra trivia challenges and puzzles and things like that. So join us for just $1 over on patreon.com/trivia with buds, and then fish around and see if any of the other higher tiers fancy your interest, like our book club, our t-shirt club, or our $50 get all of my questions and slides for the month club, if you're thinking about starting your own trivia night. Also, check out episode 70 of this show from about 2 years ago almost, that is called How to Host a Trivia Night. You can also just search on Google Ryan Buds How to Host a Trivia Night, and you will come across it. That's a fun talk with my friend Jim Fields. And my friend Wes is going to be on the show next week talking about using my questions for his very first hosting of a trivia night ever as a DJ on the East Coast. So be ready for that, kind of a follow-up to getting started with my content. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks for telling a friend, and we'll see you tomorrow for more Trivia with Buds. Cheers!